Hello, it's been a while since we saw Rebel Moon, but it's time to actually check what Zack Snyder actually was doing in the meantime that eventually got released. An animated series based on Norse mythology called Twilight of the Gods. Now, despite the name, I still haven't watched it in full, only snippets, just to check what it was about. But don't be fooled by the title. This is not an adaptation of the fourth act of The Ring des Nibelungen, which is, as the same name, just in German, Götterdämmerung, which
Mhm.
means Twilight of the Gods. This is not that. It just has it because it centers around the idea of what will cause Ragnarok and, mythology, supposedly the end of the world as we know it. Although it definitely takes its own spin into actually showcasing, and this is probably an easy job to do, not as much as Asterix and the Big Fight, mind you, but mostly because Zack Snyder really wanted this to be a not ongoing project, but definitely wanting to have the classic multiple seasons with a beginning, middle, and end kind of thing. But Netflix being Netflix, in November 2025, after just one season, cancelled it alongside the other seasons of the adaptation of Exploding Kittens and the sequel series to Good Times. So they,
You know,
they
the
they
worst,
just had a bunch of animated series that had in the works chopped after one season.
it must have stung a lot to the fan base of his show. They waited over a year to announce its cancellation. Like, typically, if you're gonna can a series, you announce it, I'd say at least half a year after the first season, but no, they waited over a year in which we could have gotten a second season before saying, sorry, guys, it's canceled. It's almost as dickish as when they canceled Residence, back when people thought Residence was just a limited series, only to confirm, guys, it's not a limited series, even though it feels like a limited series, it's just been canceled. Like, just say less in that
What
regard.
is also weird is that right now Zack Snyder is also being a bit quiet in his productions, despite him last mentioning that he wanted to continue his quote-unquote shared universe between the Army of Dead movies and the Rebel Moon saga. Instead, he's just doing a film that's supposed to be released this year called The Last Photograph, with Stuart Martin in it, but we don't know anything about it, and it's not even tied to Netflix, so who knows what's happening behind the scenes at this point. We're not here to check on, Zack Snyder's personal life, thank God. We're here to check what we actually got, as in the one season of 8 episodes. This is just to tell you in advance that don't expect, a proper wrapping up, but one classic occasion of ending on a cliffhanger that, as far as we know, will never be resolved. So, put your heart at
Thanks.
ease in advance. However,
Oh dear.
let's see actually instead what we got and if the end result in general can still be enjoyed to some degree. So as usual, start in the case of this first episode, The Bride Price, directed by Zack Snyder himself and written by Eric Carrasco, right before the usual Totum Netflix logo. In 3, 2, 1, click.
Let's see. I think
And
in terms of pantheons, I think when it comes to which ones get the most exposure in media, there's of course, first most often the Greek pantheon. Then I think Norse is usually
Yes,
second behind
and
it, and then
Egyptian
the Egyptian
yes.
one third.
It's good to know that the Japanese and Mesoamerican ones are slowly gaining ground, and there's a bit of competition from the Slavic, which is preoccupying considering the stuff that happens in there are not particularly pretty. But yes, Norse mythology is actually one that gets to be referenced a lot. We different degrees of sincerity. We have to remember that unfortunately this was co-opted during World War II time by Nazi Germany. So a lot of modern writers feels a bit not super thrilled in wanting to reference that, and it's a case of trying to wait about how you do actually portray it. Again,
When
different
it
degrees of sincerity. Each case has to be
as for
judged on its own, like this one in this case.
As for why certain pantheons are more popular than others, I chalk it up to kind of the reason why Batman tends to be more popular than, say, Superman in some regards. I say some because Superman still is the
oh
quintessential
my
version of being a
god.
superhero. But
We're
when
not
it
even
comes to Bat,
Yeah, we're doing the slow-mo
we're not
already.
even 2 minutes in and we're doing the slow-mo
Again,
shit.
this is a
would
Zack
it be
Snyder
a Zack
project,
Snyder production
so they
without
want to
it?
replicate that effect. Speaking of instead about just a second, Joe, I'll let you continue a second. The animation, if you notice, is slightly similar to how Tangled the series actually handled. It's technically 3D, but you can tell that each set of characters have like their own puppet, like positions of limb, body, and head, and they're actually doing different fluidity depending on what they do.
She literally fed him her blade. Holy cow!
Damn, Merida got violent.
And she's so cool. I think that's Sigrid, one of our main character, played by Sylvia Hoeks.
When it comes to Superman and Batman's popularity, I chalk it up to one of the reasons Batman tends to be the guy who gets a lot more of the adaptations and whatnot is simply his rogues gallery. I'd argue are probably the most popular in like comic book stuff, as opposed to Superman's rogues gallery, which aren't slouches, but outside of like Lex Luthor, Brainiac, and maybe Metallo, you don't hear as much about his rogues gallery getting talked about as much. In turn,
Hello.
I think this is the case with the pantheons. Like the Greek pantheon has all these stories you definitely recognize off the tip of your tongue. Norse mythology is pretty up there too. Egyptian stuff is where we start to get a little more obscure. Again, chances are there's a good chance you've heard of the gods there, but you haven't always heard of all their stories as much. And I think that's partially because the Egyptian mythology is okay, not more simple is the
Yes,
right
they
term, but
definitely had simpler qualities than the Greek and Norse, technically.
pretty
Anyway,
much,
here
yeah.
are the Valkyries collecting the spoils of a combat, with this one in particular taking interesting liking to Sigrid. Although she seems to like that too.
I will say it's certainly an interesting choice of design for the Valkyries.
It's Zack
Okay,
Snyder, so he
bye.
wanted to have, some kind of create shocking imagery that still harken back to when he did stuff like 300 and Watchmen, clearly. Our
Oh god.
narrator, if I recall correctly, is Sigrid's lover, called Leif, played by Stuart Martin, the guy that I mentioned is supposed to star in the next, Zack Snyder movie. And if you remember, he was also he was participating in some of his previous works, like Army of Thieves and the Rebel Moon duology.
Interesting. That said, the Valkyries taking an interest in her kind of implies some bad stuff because,
Not necessarily.
Valkyrie.
Remember, the job of the Valkyrie is just to carry the dead to Valhalla if they manage to die a glorious death in combat. Needs to be very specific. So if anything,
Oh,
they just recognized her valor and is like, yeah, see you later eventually. It's not like they're
well, my,
putting a curse that say, oh, you have a set amount of time.
oh,
I love the guy on the left saying, ooh. Hilarious.
genitalia. Am I
Oh,
right? This animation style is interesting. It's 2D, but the way it moves feels almost like it's trying to simulate 3D.
Like I said, Jova, it's very similar to what Tangle the series did.
Although I don't think it feels as cell
No,
shaded.
it's very unique nonetheless. When you think of animated series produced by Netflix, I don't really imagine this kind of animation immediately. Again, for better or worse, one of the things that Netflix allows is just a fat cache, of money for people to express their creativity with the hope that they will be allowed to finish the job and everything. So occasionally we do get impulses of interesting creativity like this one. This is why Zack Snyder kind of was perfect for it because, he was very constrained by what Warner Bros. Was telling him to do.
Yeah, we've seen cases like Jingle Jangle, Christmas Journey, or I guess for better comparison animation wise, Klaus, that, yeah, Netflix can provide the means to get visions that Hollywood would not allow to be seen. Also, these two are hot and in love and about to
Again,
get
Zack
married.
Snyder production, you should know and better when considering, Rebel Moon duology was the thing that Zacharias did right before this.
And again, let's not forget the sequel to 300, Rise of an Empire, where we literally had a slow motion sex and fight scene at the same time. Oh, yeah. Let me guess, he's going to go down on her like Zack Snyder insists Batman would do for Catwoman, isn't he?
How very specific.
Yeah, there we go. Let's see. So these two are in love in a Norse story. I'm sure
Aurora
they'll be
Borealis.
just fine. And
Localized
Odin
entirely
won't.
in your vagina.
Beautiful. Well, I'm sure that none of the Norse gods, especially Odin, will mess with their wedding for shits and giggles.
You see, Jova, from the snippets that I watched, the Norse pantheon is portrayed in an interesting manner in this, so it's not as predictable as you can think, but it still sticks to the core elements.
Yeah, I could be interested if they do something like that case where, from the humans' perspective, it seems like the gods are messing with them, but then it turns out they have secret intentions that are actually meant for the betterment of all mankind.
It
and
all
all that
depends
jazz.
on. We have to remember that mythology is a reflection of the civilization that worshipped, their beliefs. Norse mythology was all about people expressing, outside of the basic creation myth, how things are and why. It was out to express their desire of, expand and rejoice in the glory of combat, quote unquote. This was literally coded even in their afterlife, basically. But instead, some people like the Greeks wanted to have more creation myth, which were mostly tied to sexual assault, unfortunately, and explain how things were in some specific ways, even if they were bizarre. Like the original, for example, the original conception of King Midas myth was just to explain why there was a bunch of gold in a river in some place in Greece.
It's all from one man's tragedy that we became rich. But yeah, it turns out this guy truly does. It turns out he truly does love her because despite the fact that she apparently can't bear children, he doesn't care about that. It's about love. And again, in this Norse mythology story, I'm sure these two lovers will be A-okay.
You also have to remember that for the time this is set in, the idea of family and legacy and inheritance was basically everything. The idea that if your family dies with you or anything, it's not necessarily shameful, but it feels like an unfortunate thing because with time there will not be anyone remembering you. Yes, now you're in the king of England or something.
Oh. Yeah,
That's how you clean a sword, of course.
Yeah, for a second there, I thought he was going to throw the sword and he accidentally impales somebody.
See, John, but this is what Cloud should have done with the Buster Sword the other children. Just pick it up and slams it to the ground to remove the rust.
Brilliant. Of course, that's how it works. You know, I'll admit this animation style would not be out of place in a video game.
But as you will see, Jova, by the time we're recording this, we haven't really commented on it, but an indie game called Jotun does have an animation that is a bit more cartoonish than this, technically, in terms of art style, and does something similar. A lot of its cutscenes are just still images, or it's just showcased in-game because it was a Kickstarter project, but you'll see.
Wait, I forgot something. Can we go back?
Yeah, I forgot my iPod.
And of course, since it's Zack Snyder, our composer is Hans Zimmer doing an epic score.
Mm-hmm. Although he's not alone, he's also helped by Omer Benjamin and Stephen Dorr. I think these two also worked on stuff like the Rebel Moon movies.
So are they collecting all these things for the wedding or something?
If I remember correctly, yes.
Don't tell me the sword was supposed to be something old. Uh, hello there. Why don't you knee him in the crotch just to get it over with?
Yes. Oh.
What a lovely family reunion.
Wait, we eat your kind. Are they supposed to be Jotuns?
Yeah, Jotuns, yes, frost giants.
Oh, that's quite an interesting design for them. Usually the giants tend to be like bigger than the trees.
And blue, double D, double da.
Okay.
So Sigrid is voiced by Sylvia
Hooks,
Hooks.
a Dutch
Hooks?
actress, yes.
Yeah, she's from the Netherlands.
Where
And
have I heard that name before?
She was in Blade Runner 2049.
Ah, there we go. Huh, and the girl in the spider's web.
and Mother without the exclamation mark.
And of course, in 2024, she was, in the end, it doesn't even matter.
You do not fist with men.
No.
Well, I mean, yeah, you do you.
So I guess she's more so part giant.
You know, it's kind of the custom of the time.
Well, maybe we can be different. You're embarrassing me in front of my fiance.
I mean, it's a twisted logic, but it kind of makes sense. Because of all the escalating violence and everything, people will mistrust of someone offering a branch of olives because they might think they will be able to stab you in the back or something.
So we see that this king clearly has a wife. So did he cheat on his wife to have
I don't
Sigurd,
remember.
or
Again, I only saw snippets of this show. We did not see it in entirety. I mean, yeah.
fair point.
I won't stop some people from trying. It looks like sand.
It's rough core seed, as you know, it's a bunch of seeds.
Good for crops, basically.
Yeah, Odin has a tendency of not liking frost giants no matter what happens. It's unfortunate.
Which is kind of a shame given how Scotty's supposed to be in charge of that. You'd think he'd first, run it by her first.
Okay, yeah, this guy doesn't really like the godsend. He just said fuck him.
Yeah. If some of these terms seem familiar, like Volsung is bad, like I said, despite this not being an adaptation of, the Ring des Nibelungen, it's still that opera from Wagner still borrows some elements of Norse mythology. Yay!
All you're gonna do is piss off the gods.
And if you remember anything about Norse mythology, you should know that Odin has eyes everywhere. There you go, you got the approval.
Yeah.
Size doesn't matter. Oh, interesting reptile you got there.
I love it. It's the grandma who has to ask the more provocative question. Would you call it a Cold War?
For
God, imagine if it's 4 that shows up. No, I meant the number 4, not the god 4. Well, yeah.
That's dedication.
Okay, so it seems like it's more a case that just her mother died and the giantess is like her stepmom, basically. Thankfully, there doesn't seem to be any hard feelings between anyone. Take notes, Hera. Although, to be fair, a lot of that is Zeus's fault, but
Well,
still.
yeah.
oh no, the salamander, the evil salamander.
Oh, this is the happiest day of both their lives.
And there was much rejoicing.
And nothing bad happened to them.
Clearly.
And then the lizard comes in and kills
Eats
everybody
them.
somehow. And then the lizard ate them up. Wow.
No, worse. And then Loki showed up and called for an orgy. And if you've read Norse mythology, you know how freaky Loki can get.
Yeah. Speak now or forever hold your peace. For what?
The loving cup.
Nobody tells him.
What if I've broken my arm?
Well then, use it as part of the sling.
Oh.
Of course.
Oh, good, I didn't miss the kiss. Hey, you guys come here often?
Yeah, we're trying to have a wedding here. Also, yes, Zach, you still miss, Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen. I mean, let me count the ways.
Yeah. Look, Marvel did not
That's
paint Loki as
there
a bad guy. Like,
again.
Loki did a lot.
If you know anything about Norse mythology, that design for Balder is so bizarre. Please.
I mean, I'm like the most famous god in the mythology.
Alright, let me check here. Thor is played by Pilou Asbæk, another
He's
Danish,
Danish.
another Dutch actor.
No,
Uh,
no, no. He's Danish.
Danish, my bad, sorry. Oh, goody, was in the Uncharted movie. Also, Aquaman
And
and the
there
Lost
goes
Kingdom.
Grandma.
Oh, goody dweebs, he was Pontius Pilate in the 2016 Ben Hur movie you watched.
Oh,
Huh.
oh, boy. Yeah, I still remember the queasiness I felt by the end of it.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you only know Thor by superficial stuff like the Marvel comics or anything, he was more reckless and ruthless. Again, the characterization that Thor had in the first movie where he was, not caring and needed to be, put down to a peg, that's more in true in what he was doing most of the time.
The way I see Thor best summed up as is that he's a god, but he is a god who is capable of growing. Problem is, his head gets in the way of that a lot.
Belder instead is played by Hakim Kekazim, which Nigerian British. I hope Deji, forgives me for the pronunciation. It was in a bunch of movies that I don't recognize. I think a lot of these were made in Nigeria. He's been doing also a lot of television. He was in a lot of video games, like Halo, for example. Oh, it was in some. He did some additional voices for the Final Fantasy XIV expansions. Cool. Yeah.
Ow. A bit
Yeah.
of
Except these ones.
self-preservation. A bit of self-preservation might do you some good.
Defiance is the best weapon you can have against a bully.
Oh boy.
Damn, Thor's a right bastard.
Yes, again, that's the thing, Dweebs. You may have had, only a sporadic look at him in different places, but normally he tends to be more ruthless. Not necessarily this dickish, this is just an interpretation of him, but a lot of times he's really just out of control, especially against the Jotuns.
Oh, the thing about
And
Thor
they
is
killed the children anyway.
Yeah, did a bang up job, Elder. Is this another occasions where your contract about immunity makes you, numbed even to your emotions?
so okay. How do I explain this with Thor, essentially? I feel like the idea with Thor is he's technically a good person in the sense that it's the most blunt version of good in the sense that he considers himself a champion and defender of mankind. Jotun's, of course, not usually being mankind in his eyes.
So he's
That does not
racist to
mean
a
he's
degree.
pretty much, yeah. It's like, technically, by some circumstances, he is technically a good guy, but yeah, he has like almost no sense of nuance in the sense that, hey, maybe these other species might not be bad.
It's a
No,
point of
sorry,
view.
kill him.
This is basically what the Devil May Cry animated series wanted to do to an extent. The idea of, oh, this particular, conflict between these species is mostly viewed this way, but what would be from the perspective of the people that, were actually victims of this?
Oh dear.
Yeah, remember, the people who don't get into Valhalla instead tends to go to hell with a single L. She
Wow.
literally got dragged to hell. Someone was a fan of Sam Raimi.
Dude couldn't even keep his wife. I'll admit, I kind of thought it was more so
Oh, you
he
see,
was gonna be.
Jovan. She's still one of our main protagonists.
Okay, now we're in the Matrix.
Was there any reason it had to strip me naked?
Hello. Of course, gotta go classic Universal Monster transformation. Of course. You look positively elvish today, Loki.
Yeah, I wonder if they took some inspiration from the MCU where
Well,
Loki's technically a
that looks
frost giant.
boring. Yeah, that definitely looks boring to what a frost giant will look like. Let me see who plays him. Uh, Patterson Joseph, British.
I wonder if this is gonna be one of those God shows where, of course, they take the character who's usually deemed as the bad guy and show that, oh no, he's the good guy in this scenario. Kind of
God,
like what Blood of Zeus does with Hades.
this guy was in a lot of TV and theater roles. Well, that's it for basically episode 1 in the meantime. So that's your hookup. Sigrid has been dragged to hell, and Loki has a proposition for her, so to speak. She's not gonna get invited to the Avengers Initiative, no, don't worry.
I will say, as far as first impressions go, this is not bad. I'll admit, it does keep me guessing. Like, I legit thought the conflict was going to be that he gets killed or something by a god intervening because, I don't know, man shall not flock or wed with Jotun or some jazz like that. And she would have to rescue him from the afterlife or some jazz like that, or take revenge on the gods, God of War style, for destroying her happiness. But no, it seems like instead there's some plot going on. Thor's looking for Loki, who just happens to be the one helping out Sigrid here, which leaves us wondering what is at hand.
I would say that for a first episode, this is fine, but you can tell that it's not super newcomer friendly. If you don't know, if you only have a very superficial knowledge about Norse mythology, it should be fine. But this series does, as far as I understand from this first episode, does not try to explain a lot who the gods are and what their deal is. If you did not know anything about Thor, you would be wondering why he's such an asshole in this case, occasionally crashes the wedding.
Interestingly enough, the God of War Ragnarok series seems to be doing an interesting thing looking at both sides of Thor as both Thor the hero, but also Thor the asshole, and him kind of seeing recompense for that.
True, even though I have a bit my issues the way Norse mythology is portrayed to be more similar to American hillbillies, but that's a story for another time. As far as this is concerned, like I said, it's fine for now. What about you, Dweebs?
It was okay. I mean, I don't think it required too much understanding of mythology to get overall, but we'll just wait and see what happens with the rest of the episodes.
Also, this was partially founded by French taxes. Good to know.
Huh.
Alright then, yeah, Stone Quarry was the company that Zack Snyder had for this. So tune in for episode 2, which is called Heretic Spear. See ya.
Yeah.
See ya.